This is the KODI-KZMQ Morning Show with Darren Dudrick.
.47 degrees, cloudy skies in Cody at 7:31 on this Friday morning. Good morning, everybody. And joining me via the telephone, Republican candidate for Wyoming governor, Sam Galeotos. Sam, how you doing today?
Great. Good morning, Darren. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for taking the time on the radio with us this morning and tell us a little bit about yourself. And I understand, Sam, that you were running for a governor on the Republican side, and that you have an event set up in Cody. It sounds like you're going to be here in Cody tomorrow from 2 to 4 at Olive Glen Country Club. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
And you just recently announced your candidacy for governor just a few days ago or last week or something, right?
Yeah, just on this past Wednesday we announced.
Now, what is the reason? When you jump into a race like this, and we're going to talk about your resume here in just a second, but what, I guess, ignited you to make this run for governor?
Well, I really, just looking at the landscape of where Wyoming is right now, I'm a Wyoming native, and I love this state, and there's a lot of significant things going on. We're at a critical juncture with our finances and trying to gain economic growth, and I feel that I'm the best person for the job.
I look at your resume, and it's extremely, must say, extremely impressive. Now, you currently are the executive chairman of the board for the Greenhouse Data Corporation, one of Wyoming's premier technology companies. Is that right?
That's correct. We started in Cheyenne with one location, and over the last few years, we've expanded and stepped onto the national stage. We have 9 locations located around the country now.
Now, for those that don't know, what exactly does Greenhouse Data Corporation do? What's their if you can summarize that corporation, how would you summarize it?
Greenhouse Data is a data center, cloud hosting, and IT outsourcing services company. So the way I always tell everybody, we carry around our iPads and our telephones and our computers, and we all know about the cloud, and things are stored in the cloud. Well, the cloud lives somewhere, and it lives in data centers. Ah,
okay. Now, I'm looking at your resume, and I'm going to run down some of the stuff, some of the places you've worked, and some of the titles you've held. For Delta Airlines, Vice President of Marketing and Product Development, and you oversaw sales and service for Delta's global reservation system, and then WorldSpan Travel Information Systems. You were, you became co-chief executive officer for Cheap Tickets. A lot of people have heard of Cheap Tickets. You were president and chief operating officer, and then when Cheap Tickets sold to Sendot Corporation, you were the CEO of Strategic Distribution and Travel Services, and then later became president and CEO of Galileo International. So just a heck of an impressive business resume. Now, with that, Sam, how would you feel that your experience, and why is your experience important, and how will it help you if elected governor? Why do you think that's important?
Well, I think we all know that the governor is the chief executive of the state, and with that responsibility, with that position comes responsibility for a very large, organization and enterprise. And my experience as being the chief executive of both national and global companies, I feel that I have the skills and the background, really to lead the state and to be a chief executive. One of the things that are most important is that you be a good leader and you're willing to make tough decisions. And I think that is something right now that needs to be going on in the state.
And also, when you're a CEO of a company, and as big of companies have you been a CEO for, you're heavily involved in finances. And considering the climate of Wyoming right now, that would certainly be beneficial to have somebody in Cheyenne that can deal with finances.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate and blessed throughout my career. I've been able to lead all organizations in all the major disciplines of business. I've led sales organizations, marketing, strategic planning groups, IT groups, HR, been involved with finance. And so, those are all necessary skills in today's world and in today's economy. And so, that is what I bring to the table. I love the state of Wyoming. I feel that we have many large issues that need to be dealt with, including this, close to $1 billion deficit we have right now. And we need somebody that understands how to navigate us through those troubled waters.
Now, you were born and raised in Cheyenne, as you said. Now, how long have you been back to Wyoming? You returned here. When was that?
I returned back in the early 2000s, and I always tell everybody that, I kind of feel like I was the poster child for a big concern I hear as I've been traveling around the state when, I went off to college and I studied technology, and when I looked to come back to Wyoming, there were no jobs. And what I keep hearing from people is, what are we going to do about creating jobs, so that we can keep our kids and grandchildren close to us? And so I've been through that experience, and, it's hard to get back. Yeah, usually if you want to come back to the state, you come back in one of two ways. You either need to change your career, or you take a little bit of a haircut in your livelihood. And so I'm really focused on trying to prepare Wyoming kids for Wyoming jobs, driving economic growth for the state and creating good paying jobs in the state, and also, helping to get government out of the way of free enterprise.
In this day and age we live in, and you're well aware of what our country is politically. I mean, we're so split ideology like we never have been, and a lot of people like to know when people run for office, specifically an office like the governor. They want to know, where do you stand on the political scale? If you had to put yourself, are you a moderate? Are you more really a strong conservative? Somewhere in between? Where would you put yourself?
Well, I think that I would leave the labels to other people to label me, but I can tell you who I am. First and foremost, I'm a man of deep faith. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-family. I'm pro-Second Amendment. And I'm also a big believer in limited government. And so wherever that falls on the scale, I'll let everybody else decide that. But more importantly, in working in corporate America and in working my last job that I had at corporate America, I had a $1.5 billion division that I ran. We had 5,000 employees. We had 10 different companies in that division, and we operated in over 100 different countries. And those kinds of experiences teach you how to deal with different perspectives, different cultures. You have to still get the job done despite the fact that you're all coming from a different perspective or a different background. And I think that's a skill that I can bring to the state. My main objective would be to really reach out to our legislative leadership and all of the other elected offices, plus all of the different constituencies we have around the state, and really focus in on defining where is it we want to take this state. And now let's work at how we're going to get there. I don't want to make comparisons, but I have to say, your resume, like it is, deep in business and running companies and so forth, a lot like our current president, President Trump. He's not a political guy. You sound like you're not too much of a political guy, at least in the past. So, it seems like, and from what we're reading and hearing, President Trump's having a pretty successful run so far. And do you feel like that's something that you could use to your benefit, to looking at what the president's done for the country so far, and the fact that you're a Republican, you have a strong business background, you don't sound like a political guy, but you're making a run for office. Do you feel like how Trump's success can possibly help you? Well, I certainly believe his approach to the job has, he's done very well, and he's doing very well. From my perspective, I'm a conservative businessman. I'm not a politician. What I'm concerned about is helping the state that I love. I believe that we all need to give back, whether it be in the form of our service, our time, our treasure. And that's, something that we all should be looking at doing. And I applaud, all the different legislators and all the different elected individuals around the state, that they are really putting themselves out there trying to make a difference.
One of your most difficult tasks as with the other Republicans in this field is trying to separate yourself from the field. As of now, there are 6 candidates on the Republican side for governor. So what do you think the key is for you to separate yourself from the other 5? Because, some of them are known, like State Treasurer Mark Gordon and some other people that have ran for office before. How can you do that? Because that's going to be key as we get closer to the primary.
Well, frankly, I'm focused on what I can bring to the table, and I think it's very clear when we look at the field of candidates that, my background, my experiences, my skill, my experience as chief executive officer in many different, companies is what I bring to the table. I think that's what Wyoming needs right now, and I think that will be crystal clear as, people go out to cast their votes and to look at, where we need to take this state.
What do you think? What's your thoughts on the recently finished up a legislative session? If you had to give it a grade, did you feel like the legislature did a fairly decent job? Do you think there's still some things unfinished business? What's your thoughts on the recently finished session?
I think that the legislature is wrestling with some pretty big issues. As I mentioned earlier, the state was faced with a close to $1 billion deficit in its 2-year budget cycle. My understanding is looking forward that we could be looking at more of the same in the next budget cycle or even more. And so I think we really need to get focused on economic growth in the state. One of the things that I really applaud the legislature for is last year it passed a bill that created an efficiency study of the state. And I don't think most people realize this, but that efficiency study ended up coming back and showing up to $200 million of efficiency savings that the state could pursue. This last session, a few weeks ago, a phase 2 of that study was passed, and I would anticipate that study will end up generating close to another $200 million in identified potential savings. And so I really feel that now the governor, who's the chief executive of the state, I believe that the legislature should hold the governor responsible for taking that work that they did, those studies, and moving forward and putting those changes into place, because that amount of savings would be considerably beneficial to closing our deficit gap.
The talk this past session was trying to find the balance, and there's a debate on, coming up with revenue options, which the legislature, for the most part, rejected all the revenue options that they came up with. Certain cuts, taxes and fees were discussed, dipping into the savings. What's your philosophy as a business leader in looking at Wyoming's situation? Should you think the legislature should explore more revenue options instead of just dissing them? You think cuts are the way to go? More taxes, dip into savings. What would you say?
Well, I think first and foremost, what I'd say is I think all of us are concerned with the fact that, number one, we've begun to draw down our savings. Number two, we've gone beyond that, and we're now diverting money that was supposed to go to savings into helping to cover the deficit. So that is a big concern. I really think that there are 3 opportunities that we have. I have a big aversion to taxes. So I think first and foremost, we need to, play to our strengths and shore up our weaknesses. And what I mean by playing to our strengths is our 3 big industries are energy, travel and tourism, and agriculture. And when I've been around talking to people in the mineral industry and the energy industry, what I found is that they feel that there are still opportunities for them to experience, more growth. But both at the state and federal levels, there are permitting backlogs and red tape and those types of things. So I think the first thing that I would do is I would, drive to make those changes to unshackle that industry so that they can do more for the state. Number 2, we have great assets in the state, and as we've seen, our travel and tourism industry continues to grow. People love to come to Wyoming, and I think there are huge opportunities on the revenue side for expanding our travel and tourism initiatives. And then lastly, we have a legacy industry in agriculture, and I really believe that Wyoming should be, the innovator in agriculture, and we should protect that industry. And then on the weakness side, we now have ventured into some great industries. We have good technology presence now. We have, some great manufacturing starting to take place in the state. So I really think we need to focus in on how we can extend that work we've already done in those industries and turn them into long-term opportunities. Secondly, these efficiency studies, as I mentioned, are very important, and I think that we need to drive to get some conclusion there. And third, I think there's some opportunities that we have in the way of the investments the state has. We have a $20 billion invested, and I believe that we still have opportunities to raise our rate of return on those investments, which would also yield, great support to the state financially.
From what you said, it sounds like I'm guessing that diversifying the economy is pretty key in what you would try to accomplish.
Right. I think right now, we have a huge opportunity in more, light manufacturing and in technology. We do have a good presence there, and what we need to do is look, especially in the technology field, which I know very well. Everything we do involves technology nowadays. And we have an attractive state and an attractive location for technology research and work. And we really need to bear down on that and see what we can do to bring more jobs to the state or more opportunities for our Wyoming kids.
I'm visiting with Republican candidate for Wyoming governor, Sam Galeotos, and Sam's going to be in KODI tomorrow at the Olive Glen Country Club. He'll be there from 2 to 4, it sounds like, Sam, right, tomorrow?
That's correct.
So
come on out, and I look forward to talking to everybody.
Yeah, if you're looking to meet one of our candidates, Wyoming's candidates for governor, that's a good time to do it. Sam can answer your questions. He'll be happy to introduce himself. And Sam, I really appreciate the time on the radio today, and I want to wish you the best of luck. And as spring goes on, we'll get you on Speak Your Piece, sir.
I thank you very much, and I thank everybody for listening today, and I look forward to meeting more of you when I'm in the area.